Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be doing a little bit of what what you should be doing for prepping for the first exam. Um, so briefly, I'm just going to cover the different topics, the different sections of the exam, and then I'll go into some things that you might want to do in order to help you review. Um, so There's two sections, and this is something that you'll have gone over in class, but this is just a perspective of someone else, someone other than your professor. There's two sections to the exam. There's the written portion, and then there's also a typed portion. So I'm going to start with the written portion because that's what you guys will start with. So these questions, uh, these will be like quiz questions. So will be like quiz questions. So the reason I say this is because a lot of people freak out about this section of the exam. They think it's super, super hard. I don't really see it. I think it's not too bad. Um, be like with an E. But yeah, so really, if you go back and look at your quizzes, that is sort of what it's going to be like. So there's two types of questions. So there's tracing problems. And so these are the ones that say what's going to be in the command window. Be in the command window. And then the other type of problem is debugging. And so this will be phrased like, what lines have errors? How are they fixed? So those are the two types of questions that you'll see on the written portion of the exam. If you don't think that you're comfortable with these, we'll hopefully have been putting up review sheets, things that we've done in the past. And obviously you need to go, or you should very well go to the in-person review that the TAs run. We do generally a pretty good job with that. So that's the written portion. And then you have the typed portion. So the biggest thing here is I don't think none of these are actually that hard. Some will be a little tricky. The biggest thing you have to watch out for is syntax. Because what this is really testing is, do you know how to write code? Because you need to be able to read code well in order to be able to write it. So this is the biggest thing is syntax. And I would say the next biggest thing is familiarity with functions. So you need to know how all of your functions output and the different ways they can work. Since we've taught you so many matrix functions, just make sure you know how max works versus how let's see, how max versus sum, for example, because those function slightly differently, right? So go into the documentation if you don't know what I'm talking about. Then there's the types portion of the exam. This is going to be like an MA. This is in terms of it being like an MA. This is in the style, not the scope. So what we're going to do is the instructors for this course are good instructors. And what I mean by that specifically is that they are not going to put, they're not going to give an exam question that's going to, or a task within the problem that's going to take too long. they're not going to put a question that you don't know the answer to, or you won't have seen the skills that you need to uh, present before. So if like, for example, conditionals, if statements will be on it. You've seen nested and single if statements, right? So we want to make sure that you're able to use that. And so the reason I say they're good instructors is not just that, but also um, essentially the way we're testing these things is, do you know how to use this one tool, this one function, this one technique within MATLAB? And then once we've figured that out, once that's a yes or no, then you move on to prove the next thing. So it's task based, just like the MAs are, and it's really going to be sort of like crank through. We're going to tell you what to do, but not how to do it, and so just keep that in mind. Um, and so the big thing here is that it's the style, not the scope. It's not going to take 4 hours. It's a 2-hour exam, 2 or 3 hour exam, I forget. But it's not that long. So now we have the other thing is make sure that you use MATLAB documentation, which you have available to you. So this is something that students this semester have been doing really well so far, at least in office hours. They at least know where the documentation is. Now, I think I might make another video on actually sort of my methodology when I go through the MATLAB documentation, because I think some of you guys open it up and you just feel like you're overwhelmed when it's really not that bad. But make sure that you're comfortable with using it because it could come in handy. So again, if you were confused about how to use the dimension uh, qualifier on sum versus max, you'd be able to figure that out on the typed portion of the exam because you have access to the documentation. So, other things for the typed portion, I would say this is the part that requires prep. The other, I mean, this stuff, the written portion, we're gonna put up reviews and stuff, and hopefully those are helpful. And I would go through and do them, but it's not as, I mean, in terms of points, it's maybe 20%. It's up to 30% of the points, right? Because you get about half the time to work on it. So it's not going to be huge in terms of your point total. So it's also not going to be the focus of your study. This is going to be required. The typed portion is going to be what requires more studying, more study time. So the big question you all came in here for was, how do I actually study for these exams? In your other classes, so like your chemistries, your physics, you would do things like, well, you do like the practice problems, but you'd also, there's some element of memorization to it, right? So this class isn't really like that because most of the things that you need to memorize, right, would be the functions, and you all should have used them enough that you just know how to do it. The other thing is, for example, like masking, you need to remember how to do masking and all the ways that masking can be used, but there's nothing that's nothing that should be new to you. So it's not like, for example, like on my orgo exams, I've had questions where I'd never seen a reagent used in a certain way before, and then suddenly it's on the exam, right? So it's not going to be like that. But what it will be like is it's going to require, the exam is going to require you to think, and so you have to do. I think one thing, and we've done this in the reviews I've hosted in the past. this is what we've done. We've made a 2-column spreadsheet. And so what we do is in the first column here, we have a technique. And then in the second column, we have how we used it. Oh, let me get my eraser. Technique, how we used it. So for example, we might say, how did we use find? Well, so a technique would be using the find function. Right? So this is a technique, a function, so something just innately in MATLAB. And how we used it? Well, we used it on a logical mask, on a mask, to get a location, and I would say this is in bold location. Oh, that's way too many parts to my N. But what I would say is you should all go through and do this. Make this table, go through each of your MAs and think of all the different techniques that you've learned and how you used it. Then what you need to do is you need to print it out or have it on your tablet or something, and then when time comes and you're going through, you need to go back and actually type in MATLAB and come up with an example. Or if you're going through our review and you see, oh, okay, so I've used find, you'll take your highlighter, you say, I proved I know how to use find still, and move on. So you have to make sure that you actually understand each of these concepts. So I think for the first exam, this list is sort of short. For the last exam, it gets longer. But realistically, you should have something in here for each thing. So like, I would like sum and so like sum and mean, right? These are similar functions. They work the same way. So that would be my own line. And then min and max would be my own line, right? And so make this table yourself, and this will yield dividends. Because if you can do this, especially if you can do this without looking at MATLAB, you're going to be in good shape. And then go through everything and learn all your techniques. The reason I focus so much on you guys learning the techniques rather than learning how to do specific problems, I haven't even mentioned some of the common errors, but you should not be looking to memorize how you did a problem. That is probably the worst way you could study for this exam. We've had students do it, and it works out terribly. What you need to do is you need to remember the techniques and how to use them. So we're going to be combining the techniques that you've learned so far in different ways than what you've seen on the MAs. They might be similar, but they are not going to be copy pasted. We've already seen whether or not you can do the MAs. The MAs, you're given what's essentially unlimited time and unlimited resources. We know whether or not you know the answer to those problems at this point. What we're testing is whether you can solve a problem on your own without help in a limited amount of time. So that is why the focus is on learning the techniques and not memorizing the problems. Now, reviewing the problems is certainly a good thing to do. I think reviewing the problems and putting them to here is a good method. And then finally, and I really want to put a big caution note on this, is you can go back and redo your problems. What I would do, and I think the most beneficial aspect of this might be, is if you redo your problems under a time constraint. So restart, have a blank script, pull up one of your MAs, and see how far you can get, because now you have complete knowledge of the problem. You know sort of how it should be done. but you've never done it in a time constraint. So set an alarm for an hour. I think, I don't know exactly how long it is. It might be 75 minutes, it might be 90 minutes, I forget. Um, but set an alarm for an hour and then go and work on it. Don't have any distractions. Tell your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, to buzz off for an hour and work on the problem and see how far you get. And just having that time constraint is going to be important, because I've had a lot of students express, at least after the first exam, and it's almost always just after the first exam, that it's like, wow, like I'd never realized like either how slow I was at typing, or like sort of uh, what that time crunch was going to do to me. And so it freaks a lot of people out. So if you can remove that test anxiety, and I think this is a great way to do it, and it's the reviews that we've done have also had this element to it, and the reason is to remove that anxiety. Um, so if you can sort of work through that test anxiety before the exam, that's also going to help you a lot. Um, Other tips, I'm trying to think if there's anything more general. Um, I think outside of that, go to the review. Well, for all the exams, go to the reviews. So we'll have a review before each exam. I want to say Solomon's running them this semester, but there'll be multiple TAs there. And so that's your opportunity to get help. Um, you're going to be having probably this will for some of you be your most difficult exams of the semester. So give yourself all the help that you can and really take advantage of what you're being provided. Um, if if you don't take advantage of all the resources we have, then it's hard to feel sorry for you if you do poorly. Um, so really, really, really do take advantage of all the things we have. Ask the questions you need to get asked. And then finally, one last thing, and I'll actually write this down instead of just yapping in your ear. But come to office hours. So you are going to run into things that you don't remember learning, that you don't understand anymore, that you need help with. You're going to want to review your old MAs. Another thing, when you're reviewing your old MAs, look at your rubrics. I have a video up on how to look at your rubrics. Look at that video if you aren't already looking at your rubrics. But come to office hours. Get help from the TAs. It is just completely beyond me, and this also applies to the other TAs. We cannot understand how you guys are willing to come and sort of rush office hours every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, uh, and just the room gets all sweaty and everyone's freaking out over things that are worth 1-2% of your final grade. And then the week of the exams, which are worth much more than that, I think this first exam is going to be worth more than all of your MAs combined. Somehow, under that situation, when far more of your grade is on the line, you all just don't show up, and it's a really light week. So as much as we like having that light week, it's really, really concerning for us because we don't have any intuition as to how you guys are doing. So if you truly, truly do understand everything, then yeah, you don't have to come to office hours, but you have to make that assessment. And I would say that most people would benefit from coming to office hours, even if it's just for a short time to get clarification on a couple of the topics they're least comfortable with. Because really, this is the time to use this huge resource that we're giving you. Um, so make sure to take advantage of it. Anyways, I think I've talked long enough already. hopefully this has given you a decent idea of what we're looking for the exam, looking for within the exams and how to study it. This is your intro on how to study for 1331. I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, stop by office hours or online office hours, which you all have available to you. So there's another thing. Come on. No excuses, right? No excuses. Um, Make sure you utilize all your resources and you'll do great on the exam. Thank you for stopping by.